Hello there. So I'll just wait a second, see if the chat's doing anything. Chat's behind again by like 30 seconds. We had that in the last one. That's a bit annoying, but oh well. Let's see. Right, so we'll get into this quickly. Obviously, I did one of these last week, which seemed to go down quite well, and there were requests to do more. Yep, everyone's chatting, so that's good. So I think I'm about a minute ahead, which is a little annoying, but oh well. So I did obviously a tier list for 2010s drivers. So now we're going to do a tier list for 2000s drivers. Again, same rules as before. We're looking at their performances in the 2000s decade only. So as far as this is concerned, Lewis has 1 championship, not 7. Alonso has never driven for Ferrari, and Vettel has no championships. So if I press this, it should change to share screen, hopefully. I'll just wait, see if this my stream changes with it. Make sure that's working. Which hopefully it is. See if the chat's going to update itself. It's being a bit slow. Good. Yes, that seems to have worked. Right. So I didn't change the tier names because I basically couldn't think of meme specific ones for the 2000s because most of the 2000s kind of predates social media and memes and that. So we've still got the same tier categories of GOAT, not bad for a number 2 driver, Torpedo, Mid, Spinalla, Pay driver, and then Cucumber. And again, it's the same. We've got 71 drivers to go through, so slightly more than in the 2000s. And they'll be going alphabetically. Why isn't the chat... My chat... I've got chat up on my phone. It's not updating. I'll just have a look, see if I can get that to update itself a bit. Right, well, I'm just going to get going anyway, and then I'll see if the chat catches up, because it seems to just be stuck in one place. Okay, so first of all, we have Christijan Albers. So he drove for Minardi in 2005, and then drove for Midland in 2006. At Minardi, okay, slowest car that year, backmarker car. It was he was definitely faster than Patrick Friesacher and Robert Dornbos. He had a couple of times he had a pretty good qualifying, because this is back when they had the sort of 1 lap shootout system. And then Midland, he was beaten by Montero that year. He had some pretty rotten luck. He had a lot of mechanical breakdowns as well. So I'm seeing Spinalla, Pay driver, Spinalla as well. So yeah, I think for him, and and Spiker, of course he did. He drove for the first. I forgot that first half of 2007. He drove at Spiker, and then eventually his sponsorship ran out. But again, he was being beaten by Adrian Sutil the whole time. So it looks like it's between Pay driver and Spinalla. So on the basis that he had a lot of bad luck, I think I'll go for Spinalla for Christijan Albers. Second is Jean Alesi. So this is the tail end of his career, because obviously he was one of the key figures in the 90s, spent a long time at Ferrari. In the 2000s, he moved to Prost for 2000, I believe, alongside Nick Heidfeld, and he stayed there in 2001. And then it was towards the end of 2001 that he switched and did a few races with Jordan. So he obviously was very experienced driver, but was driving some pretty shoddy cars, I think. What's the chat thinking? Mid. Yeah. Seeing a lot of mid. So yeah, I think I think mid is a good shout probably for Alesi. I think it's hard to say really. There's not it's not a proper it's not really fully representative of his career or him as a driver. So I think mid is fair enough for Jean Alesi. Next up is Jaime Alguersuari. So he did the second half of 2009, replacing Toro Rosso, and replacing Sébastien Buemi at Toro Rosso. It was a bit of an unexpected jump up for him, and he spent a lot of the year basically just trying to acclimatise to Formula One cars and get his fitness levels up. And he was also very young because he was only 19. At the time, he was the youngest driver in Formula One history, actually. But he never scored any points. Wasn't too remarkable. I mean, yeah, but pretty new to it still. Have we got anything in the chat? Or it's just coming in for Alguersuari. Mid, Spinalla, pay driver, one of them. Yeah, he didn't do anything particularly bad or particularly good. I think he was relatively safe. I'm trying to avoid taking into account what he did in the 2 years afterwards, because that's when the main bulk of his career was. But I suppose I've put Alesi in mid and Albers. Yeah, I'm leaning towards Spinalla, I think, for Alguersuari. What we got? Mid, Spinalla mid, another Spinalla. I think Spinalla is fair enough for Jaime Alguersuari. Right. So from one Spanish driver to another, it's Alonso. I think this is an obvious GOAT. It's not, yeah. There's not really any other way about it. This is peak Alonso, the 2000s. Obviously, two championships, a whole host of wins. I mean, 2007 was quite a dodgy year. 2008 had Crashgate. 2009 just had basically a useless car. But yeah, it's such an obvious GOAT for Alonso. So yeah, we'll put Alonso in GOAT. Right. After Alonso, we have Luca Badoer. So he's an interesting one. I ranked him near the bottom in the ranking video. He only has 2 races to his name in the 2000s because he spent he did a lot of driving for backmarker teams, mostly Minardi in the 90s, and then became Ferrari's test driver in the 2000s. And then as a reward after Massa's crash at Hungary, as a reward basically for his service, he was given the races. But you know, this is when they banned it pre-season. They banned in-season testing, so he'd never driven the car. New regulations of car with these funny diffusers. 2 very poor races, and then he was dropped to replace Fisichella. So I think, yeah, I think Cucumber. I'm seeing already Cucumber pay driver. At least he didn't crash the car. Cucumber, but he was very rusty. Yeah, he was. Yeah. If it was the 90s, if I was factoring in the 90s, he'd probably fall in pay, but because he was just so far below what the car could do. I mean, he finished 14th in Spa, and Kimi won it. And yeah, so I think Cucumber is a good shout for Luca Badoer. I'm hoping that by pausing I can get the chat to catch up, but I don't think it really works that way. Whenever I talk, it's going to be like I'll have to wait 30 seconds, and then people will start responding to the next driver. But oh well. Okay, so next up is Rubens Barrichello. So, for obvious reasons, I'm thinking not bad for a number 2 driver. He's kind of the OG number 2 driver and basically the Valtteri Bottas of the 2000s. But I mean, to be honest, I think he was better than Bottas was at Mercedes. I mean, he was a perfectly competent driver. He'd already had years of experience in the 90s. But then he had the Honda years were not so good. I mean, a less competitive car, but Jenson Button was the better driver for those 3 years anyway. 2009, he won a few races, and again was far behind Button in that car. But he was just such an experienced driver, is the thing. He didn't have any particularly awful days that I can think of. I mean, he won races here and there. I mean, he was victimized a bit with team orders and stuff. Mostly number 2s. I'm seeing a few goats. Yeah, I think it's. I think number 2 is a fairly obvious one for Barrichello, all things considered. So yeah, I think Barrichello can be not bad for a number 2 driver. Right, who's that? It's, Zsolt Baumgartner is next. So he is the only Hungarian driver in Formula 1 history. He did a couple of races with Jordan in 2003, and then he spent a season with Minardi in 2004. So, again, not very competitive cars. He scored 1 point for Minardi, but otherwise, yeah, was just running around at the back. So, my first thoughts, I'll see when the chat catches up. My first instinct is pay driver, because he was at the back, but he wasn't bad, I don't think. He was just unfortunate that he had quite a short career in some very bad cars. So I'm seeing a couple of pay driver, Spinella. Yeah, a lot of people are seeing pay driver, so I think pay driver's fair enough. Spinella feels a little generous, so yeah, I think we can put Zsolt Baumgartner can go in pay driver. So then it's Enrique Bernoldi next. So he drove. He spent 1.5 years driving for Arrows. So he was there during their downfall. He had a couple of notable races. I mean, the main one was Monaco in 2001, I believe, when he held Coulthard up for 35 laps or something. And Coulthard was furious, but then he had no obligation to let him past, to be honest. Otherwise, yeah, I mean, he struggled. 2002, Arrows were on their last legs. I'm seeing pay driver a lot, yeah. And he didn't get any points. I mean, the car couldn't really finish, but Frentzen had a better truck with it. So I'm seeing pay driver. OG Minister of Defense, yeah, obviously, yeah. Yeah, I think pay driver. I mean, he wasn't really. He didn't really have much on Jos or Heinz, I think. So, yeah, we can have another pay driver for Enrique Bernoldi. Next up, Sébastien Bourdais. Now, I kind of feel bad for Sébastien Bourdais because he came into F1 with quite a lot of street cred, I suppose, as a 4-time Champ Car champion. But he just never. He had bad luck, but also he obviously wasn't as used to driving the way the cars drove as Vettel. Because once Vettel started putting in some really good performances in 2008, Bourdais just wasn't keeping up. And when he did do well, something would go wrong which would wreck it. So, for example, him qualifying at the front with Vettel in Monza, and then the car stalls and he has to start a lap down when he possibly could have finished on the podium with him. And then Spa, when he was on course for a podium and then dropped to 7th when it started raining on the final lap as well. But 2009 didn't go so well. He was getting kind of matched roughly by Buemi before he got dropped. So seeing mid, Spinella again. It's a difficult one because it's a mixture of bad luck. It'll either be mid or Spinella. I'm leaning more towards Spinella because even without the bad luck, his pace was just so far off Vettel's. So I think for Bourdais, we'll put Bourdais in Spinella. Yeah. This chat is slower than the 2010 HRT. Yeah, I know it's delayed. I don't know why it's this far behind. I mean, if I wasn't screen sharing, maybe it's more up to date on the live streaming page. But yeah, it is. It annoys me a bit that I chat and then it takes like 30 to 45 seconds, and then I suddenly get people's verdicts coming in for each driver. But yeah, so let's move on. So the next driver is Gianmaria Bruni. So we can compare him to Baumgartner because they were teammates at Minardi in 2004. So Baumgartner got a point where Gianmaria Bruni did not. But again, not a desperately bad driver, just unlucky to be spending a year in a not very good car. And with Baumgartner, he got that point in a race of high attrition, still finished last on track. So I think, yeah, for Bruni, I mean, I've seen we've got pay driver already. Yeah, I think, to be honest, there's not much to just. He wasn't that different from Baumgartner in terms of performance. So I think we can put Gianmaria Bruni in pay driver. Close to cucumber, some people are saying, but yeah, I don't think he's in cucumber territory. There weren't enough mistakes in there, I don't think. So after Gianmaria Bruni, it is Sébastien Buemi. So he again was a rookie in 2009 at Toro Rosso, replacing Vettel. He scored a few points. He was basically on top of Bourdais. Alguersuari, again, he was on top of. He didn't have... I'm trying to remember if there were any notable accidents involving him. I get the feeling something happened at Brazil, unless I'm just picturing Sutil and Trulli at the start. But otherwise, he scored a few points. I mean, he would have... I think using the modern point system, he would have scored something like 25 points, which is quite a lot for a Toro Rosso. So I'm seeing, yeah, mid coming in. Yeah, I mean, to be honest, definitely above Bourdais and Alguersuari, and they're both in Spinella. So I think lost 2 front wheels. That was 2010 in China. That was a weird one. It was the wishbone broke on one when braking, and for some reason, obviously the energy, the shockwave, I suppose, just took both wheels off at the same time. So yeah, I think for Sébastien Buemi, he can go in mid. I think that's a fairly safe bet for him. Right. So after him, we have Luciano Burti. So he did. There was Jaguar and Prost. So he filled in for a couple of races, covering for, I think, Eddie Irvine in 2000 or 2001 with Jag. And then he did some races with Prost as well. But again, so 2 uncompetitive teams. Yeah, my mind goes blank with him. Really, there's not a huge amount I can remember. I don't think it was particularly good. So, see what people are thinking. Pay driver. Spa. Oh, of course, he had that enormous. That was what ended his career. Was that enormous shunt at Spa in 2001? I've forgotten if that was mechanical. I think did he hit someone from behind? And because he went on, it was so fast. It was through Blanchimont, wasn't it? It was a magnet for big accidents. Yeah, Spinella. I don't know if I want to put him in Cucumber. My first instinct is Pay Driver. He ran over the back of Schumi, right? Okay. Burti, yeah. Irvine crash. Irvine helped him getting out, right? Okay. So I think. Oh, it was Eddie Irvine. Okay, yeah, that's what it. Yeah, that makes sense now. Bit rusty because again, this is before I was watching Formula One properly, and I was quite young, so it's not etched into my memory in the same way as the 2010s is with the races. Yeah, nobody said Cucumber. I've seen a lot of Pay, so I guess my first thought for Luciano Burti is we can go with Pay Driver. Right, next, Jenson Button. So, my first instinct of him on the base, again, he won a championship, so the first benchmark is GOAT, and then I think we go from there. So, obviously, he had his fairy tale year with Brawn in 2009. Before that, obviously spent most of his time in the midfield. 2004 was pretty solid, certainly. That was a very good year for him. I mean, Ferrari was so fast that it was never any opportunity to win races. And yeah, I think we can forgive him for his early years when he was a rookie and very young, just making mistakes. But yeah, and a couple. I mean, he had to endure a lot of very dodgy cars, but he showed early, particularly with his first win in Hungary, what a good wet weather driver he is. But yeah, to be honest, I don't think you can be if you've won a championship, you can't be anything other than a GOAT. So I think we can put Jenson Button in GOAT. Right. David Coulthard. So again, he was kind of almost a number 2 driver, but not quite at McLaren. Obviously, very long partnership with Häkkinen. Then Raikkonen comes in and kind of starts to usurp him when he would have become team leader and starts outpacing him. And then he got dropped 2004. He moved to the new Red Bull team. Pretty good first year. Obviously, his experience showed, and he got a couple of podiums for Coulthard. 2007 and 8 with Webber. Webber was definitely the better of the two, but obviously this was towards the end of his career. 2008 was a pretty awful year, actually. There were a lot of crashes, including the very last race. So seeing GOAT number 2, not bad for a number 2. Number 2, too good for mid-team and not good enough to win championships. Yeah. Raced against Pete Kimi as well, yeah. Because he was runner-up in 2001, he was runner-up, although that's not saying much because he was still probably, 100 points or something behind Schumacher, something enormous. Yeah, I think if you were looking, you could almost, if he was just his McLaren years, you could almost justify putting him in GOAT, but I'm seeing mostly number 2. So yeah, I think for David Coulthard, we can put him in the not bad for a number 2 driver. Okay, so then we have Cristiano da Matta. So in my head, I always get him mixed up with Antonio Pizzonia, which is kind of odd. I mean, they're both Brazilian, but they didn't drive. They drove around the same time, but they didn't drive for the same teams. Cristiano da Matta, he had a couple of years at Toyota. Actually quite good. Like, his first year was actually very decent. I mean, he was leading before that guy ran on the track. He was leading part of the British Grand Prix. And he was generally pretty fast. He was against, it would have been Olivier Parnis at that time, also a very experienced driver. I think I ranked him around somewhere in the top 30, actually, when I did my ranking video for Cristiano da Matta. I was thinking Spinella, mid. I'm thinking around mid. I've forgotten the circumstances. He got dropped early at the end of 2004 because then Trulli came in. 2003 Torpedo, 2004 mid. Yeah, Torpedo might be a little generous for da Matta. I'm not sure. I'm mostly seeing either mid or Spinella. When he had a good day, it was a fairly good day. Let me think. Spinella, Torpedo, Spinella, mid. I think mid. I suppose Torpedo is a little generous. So I think if we'll put Cristiano da Matta, he can go in mid. Right. Next up is Anthony Davidson. So for him, his career, he had another one of these careers that was very stop-start because it was kind of intertwined with lots and lots of testing. So he joined BAR in 2000, and then he filled in for Alex Young for a couple of races in 2002 at Minardi. Didn't have a particularly good debut with them, though. Then he did a couple of races in 2005 at BAR at the start of the year. Again, they didn't go very well. How long have you watched F1? I started watching properly in 2008, but I suppose it got my attention more in 2007 because of Lewis mostly. Before that, I watched it on and off, and I knew who all the big names were, but I didn't really pay a huge amount of attention. And I mostly just liked the colours of the cars, because you had, red was Ferrari, yellow, Jordan, orange arrows, blah, blah, blah. So Anthony Davidson, 2007, he generally had a better grips with the car than Sato did, but probably because it was the same car that he'd spent the previous year testing all the time, because it was just a rebadged Honda. Although he didn't score any points, that was mostly due to bad luck, though. I mean, there was things like Canada where he was running in third, and then he hit a groundhog, which broke his front wing. And then 2008, did 4 races, and then the team collapsed. So what we got? Spinella mid, Spinella, Torpedo. It's because there's a lot of bad luck involved here, is that his driving was very just safe. He didn't have, other than Canada, which was a very odd race with everything that went on, he didn't have any real standout performances in particular. Hey Peter, how are you doing? I'm very well, thank you. Mid, Spinella, mid. Other than that, he didn't have, I think he in Minardi races he crashed in one of them, but at Super Aguri I don't remember having any accidents necessarily, so not much of a crasher, just kind of okay. I think Torpedo's a little generous. I think mid is a fair one for Anthony Davidson. So yeah, I'll put him in mid. Okay, so next is Pedro Della Rosa. So this is unlike the 2010s video, which is just right at the end, this is the main bulk of his career. So he'd done a year with Arrows in 99, and then he stayed with them going into the 2000s. He moved to Jaguar in 2002 and had, against Eddie Irvine, it didn't go particularly well. I mean, Irvine was getting a couple of podiums and he wasn't really scoring points. Again, for doing my video about him, just endless gearbox breakdowns. After 2002, he moves to McLaren. Gets a long testing career with them, and obviously his substitutes once in 2005 where he got fastest lap in Bahrain, and then did the second half of 2006 after Montoya got fired and got second place in Hungary. So saying mid, Torpedo, proper fast on a good day. I think so. I mean, okay, we haven't had anyone in Torpedo, and so I feel like that could be a good one for Della Rosa. Because again, just so experienced, but so such a stop-start career. I think we didn't get to see that much of him at McLaren. The only time he had a properly decent car, really. Pedro de Torpedo. I like that one. Yeah, let's put Pedro de la Rosa in Torpedo. Yeah, he can go there. Right. Okay. Another Pedro, Pedro Diniz. You could sort of say with Diniz that he could be like, you could call him like the Lance Stroll or the Nicholas Latifi of the 90s. He just kind of hung around, a guy with lots and lots of money, not a huge amount of talent, and just kind of hung around for ages. He'd been 95 or 96. It was one of those years he entered. He moved to Sauber in 99 and he was with them again in 2000. But a lot of crashes, didn't score any points, whereas Mika Salo did. And then he fell out with the team at the end. And then joined Prost as a stakeholder and then fell out with Prost and then left them and now works on his farm in Brazil. Yeah, pay driver. Yeah, I think everyone's saying pay driver. I mean, okay, yeah, he's literally and figuratively a pay driver. So Pedro Diniz, yeah, he can go in pay driver, I think. Right, Robert Doornbos. So this is an interesting one. So he's raced under a Dutch and a Monegasque license, and he doesn't race anymore, but he's found a new career making sex toys. Interesting guy. So he did the second half of 2005 with Minardi, and he did the replacing Patrick Friesacker, and then he did 3 races with Red Bull at the end of 2006, replacing Christian Klein. I don't know what there's much to say about this one. He was just, yeah, very, very unremarkable and short F1 career. So I'm seeing a lot of bit mixture of pay driver and Spinella. Mate, that's the thing, because he didn't crash ever that I can think of, but he just wasn't actually that fast either. So he's just, yeah, just kind of, yeah. Spinella or pay driver? Spinella, if we compare him to Albers was definitely faster in 2005 when they were teammates. He was in the 3 races he did do in 2006. He was quite far behind David Coulthard in the Red Bull. He was kind of fighting around where Toro Rosso were. So I'm seeing pay driver. I'm seeing more Spinella, qualified 10th in China and got contact with Kubica at the start, right? China 2005 is Schumacher. I don't remember. I'm trying to think that race. I remember Karthikeyan crashing and because he hit a manhole cover, a loose drain cover that like destroyed the car from underneath. I'm seeing more Spinella than pay driver, so I guess Spinella for Robert Doornbos. Yeah, I think I'll just go with that. Okay, Tomáš Enge. So the only Czech driver in Formula 1 history. So he did 3 races with Prost in 2001. Not very good races. He totaled the car a couple of times. And then afterwards, he's had a career in GT cars and sports cars, but has had he's had lots of controversies of getting in trouble with basically doping since then. So on the basis of 3 races in a bad car, crashed a lot, wasn't very fast. So I think Tomáš Enge can go in Cucumber. So I'm already seeing Cucumber, caught for drugs, Cucumber. Yeah, I think Cucumber for Tomáš Enge. Okay. Ralf Furman. So the last Irishman to race in Formula One. So he spent 2003 with Jordan. He ended up missing a couple of races because he had a very big shunt in practice in Hungary and injured himself. Other than that, that was the year that Fisichella won a race in very strange circumstances. Furman scored 1 point at Barcelona. Otherwise, yeah, didn't do much. Just another one of the long list of drivers that did a single season and just didn't do much and isn't remembered for a huge amount. I think he was better than pay driver. So what we've got, I think the cucumber's about Enge. Spinella, pay driver, Spinella, pay driver. I mean, yeah, he probably was a pay driver in real life, I imagine. I mean, at that time, this was Jordan were on their last legs, and they were really, really short of cash at this time. He was Irish. I think he was actually born in Norfolk, but his parents were Irish, and so then he raced under an Irish license. I think, I think, to be honest, I think we can be a little generous with him, and we can put a Ralph Furman in Spinella. Okay, Giancarlo Fisichella. So he is in a similar position to people like Barrichello and Coulthard in being the sort of number 2 driver to the champion or a champion contender when he was at Renault. Before that, he did have some pretty solid years. He had Jordan. There was Jordan 2002 and 3. There was Sauber in 2004 and Benetton in 2000. He's one of these drivers that switches back and forth a lot between teams. But he did this thing that Bottas would do of winning a couple of races at the start of the year and then just kind of falling apart as it went on. And then 2007, he was Renault. He was towards the end. He was getting beaten by his rookie teammate Kovalainen, and then 2008. Again, really shoddy car. 2009, again, pretty bad car, but it was better than Sutil. And then he had a couple of really crappy races with Ferrari. And that was kind of the end of his career. So I'm seeing mostly number 2. Spa 2009, yeah, of course, he got pole position. I don't know where that came from. That was a weird car. The 2009 Force India, because it wasn't, at a glance, it was not much better than their previous one. But then he suddenly comes out and gets pole position in Spa, and then the following round Sutil gets fastest lap. It's like, where did that come from? But if we look, the main thing he's remembered for at this time is Renault, and he had more breakdowns, but also just wasn't as fast. 1 or 2 wins, but wasn't on the level of Alonso, obviously. So I think he can go. I'm mostly seeing number 2. A couple of Torpedo. I don't know about Torpedo so much. He was very lucky, but obviously that was a pretty remarkable win in Brazil. I think number 2 could go for Fisichella, number 2 driver. Ooh, I've received a super chat. Oh, it's just gone. Sorry. Well, thank you to whoever that was. It's just come up on my phone. I can't see it on my laptop screen, which is really annoying. But thank you anyway. So next up is Heinz-Harald Frentzen. Right. So again, he's another one who was kind of mostly a 90s driver and then drifted a bit. Was at the tail end of his career. So 1999 was actually quite good because that was the year he was, for a briefest moment, it was a sub. Oh, okay, it was a subscription. Right, okay. Yeah, I can't see it very well on my phone. So 1999 was a title contender for the briefest of moments, and then just wasn't quite able to sustain it really, which is fair enough in that car. Sticks with Jordan going into 2000, but the car, they had a few years where the car was fast but broke down a lot, and then they had a few more years where the car was slow and broke down a lot. So what we're seeing Torpedo, high mid, Torpedo. Yeah, I mean, he was a very experienced driver. He had a year at Sauber as well. 2000, that was his final year. 2003 was Sauber, and he got a podium near the end in Indianapolis. Yeah, I think it's the thing. He was a good driver and obviously very experienced, but he was just burdened with cars that broke down a lot. Yeah, so we're seeing 2000 was Meh, 2001 was poor, 2000 was Meh, 2003 was mid. Yeah, Torpedo, Torpedo in the 90s, mid 2000s. Torpedo. It's looking at Torpedo or mid. Yeah, let's see. Because at the moment, I shouldn't really be thinking about it. So we've only got one driver in Torpedo at the moment. But on a good day, he could drive really well. But mostly it was just not. It just didn't really come together, I think. I just think he's in a similar position to Alesi again, who was an experienced 90s driver, and then towards the tail end, I put Alesi in mid. Most people are saying mid, so I think we can put Heinz-Harald Frentzen in mid. Yeah. Okay, Patrick Friesacher. So he is another one to add to the long list of pay drivers in Formula One's history. So he drove for Minardi in the first half of 2005. Wasn't on the pace at all, really, at all. In the 6-car race, he got in Indianapolis, he finished 6th. And then not long after that, he got dropped when his money ran out, and they replaced him with Robert Dornbos. It's going to either be pay driver or cucumber. I can't think of any accidents off the top of my head, so that's a good starting point. But yeah, he was just really slow. So we're seeing what we've got: cucumber, pay driver, cucumber. The cucumber category is surprisingly empty considering it's the 2000s. I mean, so maybe we should put him in cucumber. Just trying to think about the ones like, because like people like his predecessors, Baumgartner and Bruni, were relatively solid in that car, and he just wasn't. There's quite a big gap between him and Albers. Yeah, I'm seeing mostly cucumber, so I think we can put let's put Patrick Friesacher in cucumber. Okay, next is Marc Gené. Right. So Gené, his debut year was 1999 with Minardi, and then he stayed with them again in 2000. Well, he was definitely better than his teammate Gastón Mazzacane, and the car was, for a Minardi, reasonably reliable, so he got a few high positions, but again, not a very good car. Then he did a couple of years. He was a test driver with Williams, and so he filled in for them a couple of times when Ralf Schumacher had a habit of crashing and hurting himself. So he filled in a few times, but quite disappointing performances, because this was 2002, 2003, or 2003 and 2004 rather, when they had one of the better cars. And then just lots of years testing with Ferrari, and then became a brand ambassador for them. So what we got: Spinella mid, pay driver mid, pay driver. Had it just been Minardi, I'd almost be inclined to put him in Spinella, but because he was so far off in the Williams in the couple of races he had, and it's not like he was new to it, like he was a test driver for them. Once I put Minardi and then Ferrari. He didn't drive for Ferrari. I think you mean Willie. He drove for Willie. He would have. I'm guessing he would have scored points in the Williams in the few races he had, I'm sure. My gut's going Spinella for the moment. A sort of high Minardi, but damaged a bit by the Williams as a sub, just not being as good as he could have been, I think, at the Williams. Chat seems to have frozen a bit, but I'll put Gené. And Marc Gené can go in Spinella, I think. Okay, next up is Timo Is That Glock. Gené fifth in Italy. Yeah. I knew it was Monza where he gets a couple of points. Right. So Timo Glock. So this is Timo before he basically wasted 3 years driving at Virgin. So he did a couple of races. 2004, filling in for Ralph Furman. And he did pretty well in them. He certainly did better. Not Ralph Furman, sorry, Giorgio Pantano. Did better than that. It is Glock, yes, it is. Oh my goodness me. Then he, after winning GP2 in 2007, he moves to Toyota. Here, he's not that far off Trulli's pace. Generally, he's pretty good midfield, but he had 3 very big crashes: Australia 2008. Germany 2008, and then Japan 2009, which paved the way for Kamui Kobayashi to come in. A lot of people are saying Torpedo. I think that's Tim O'Glock, the Irishman. Almost everyone is saying Torpedo, and I think that's fair. Fast but crashed a lot, so we can put him in. He got a couple of podiums. He did certainly. Let me think. Singapore 2009. And I think the other one was the other one in 2009. There was another one. I think it wasn't Bahrain. Bahrain was the race where him and Trulli started on the front row, but then fell backwards in the race. I mean, again, it was all over the place. The 2009 Toyota, it couldn't make its mind up if it wanted to win races or finish last. That car, basically. We'll put Glock in Torpedo. Hungary 2008 second. Yes, of course. That was when Kovalainen won that, and when Massa broke down. Yeah, so Hungary 2008 and Singapore 2009. Those are the 2 second places he got. Does he have the fastest lap at Le Mans? Potentially. I thought that was. I thought Kobayashi had that. Unless that only counts during qualifying. So Singapore, Malaysia. 2009 Malaysia. Button won it. Yeah, that was the other one. Yeah, it was Glock, and then it was Heidfeld. That sounds about right. So yeah, there are a few. Yeah. Anyway, Japan 2009. Yeah, that was when he crashed and broke his back, and Kobayashi came in. Okay. So Romain Grosjean. This is the kind of less interesting Grosjean, because it's when he got called up quite early to Renault to replace Nelson Piquet. Again, not really ready yet. I mean, he came back 3 years later, and having won GP2 and the GP2 Asia Series. I remember his first race, he just kept spinning all the time in Valencia. He never scored any points outside of that it wasn't the best car, but it was definitely capable of scoring points. But again, he was against Alonso as a teammate. We're seeing, crash prone, a lot of cucumber. Cucumber also got a podium. Grosjean would be a cucumber. Yeah, I think on the basis that he just wasn't ready at all, I think we can put him in cucumber. Pay driver spinning. Right. Oh, another subscriber. Oh, that's good. So, Lewis Hamilton. Yeah. Again, the default is GOAT because he won a championship, and there's not really much to dispute that with that, I don't think. Because even if you wanted to point at things like China 2007 or Canada 2008, or just how awful the car was for the first half of 2009, you can't dispute it. It's an obvious GOAT. to be honest. I mean, yeah, it's in, yeah, goat, yeah. So, yeah, we'll put Lewis is going to go in GOAT. Yeah, 2009 was atrocious. Yeah, I mean, he did... That wasn't... Obviously, he had a crappy car for the first half, and then also just a few accidents and breakdowns when he didn't need them as well. Sort of analogous to this year. I mean, I think, to be honest... the car this year is obviously better. He hasn't won any races yet, but at its worst, it wasn't as bad as the 2009 McLaren. So, next up is Nick Heidfeld, Quick Nick. So we can make a better assessment of him than the previous one because this is the main bulk of his career. So he joins Prost in 2000. Absolutely terrible car. Can't do much with it. 2001 he goes to Sauber. He's there alongside Kimi. It's fairly even, but even though he's the more experienced one of the two. 2002. Oh gosh, this is where my mind goes blank because he had at 2004 he was at Jordan, and it would have been Sauber still. 2002, I'm sure. Heidfeld. Number 2, Torpedo. Number 2. Yeah, I can't remember. 02, 03. Someone will say I've forgotten what teams he was driving for those years. Williams 2005. He got the only pole position of his career, but then didn't win the race, unfortunately. BMW Sauber 2006, and then spends 3 years of those. Mostly quite good, very dependable, but he didn't have... Kubica was the one that won a race and had like those breakthrough performances that Heidfeld just didn't really have. So I'm mostly seeing either Torpedo or number 2. Very consistent. Yes, he was. I mean, he finished second 8 times. He has, isn't it the record? He has the record. He has the record either for most podiums without a win, or it's the most race starts without a win. Something like that. Sauber, yeah, 2001 to 3. Yeah, I thought it would have been Sauber. And then 2004, yeah, a year at Jordan in 2004. Yeah, I mean, number 2, I think it's perfectly good for him because he was just very, very dependable, but things never quite came together in the right way for him to be able to win a race. So yeah, I think we can put him in number 2. I mean, he kind of almost personified number 2 by finishing second so many times. Okay, Johnny Herbert. So he's another one. There are so many drivers in the 2000s that did most of their racing in the 90s and then just kind of faded out going into the new century. So this is only looking at a year at Jaguar, which ended with I don't think any points, and he ended it on a stretcher at Malaysia. So again, he was one of the mainstays of the 90s and won a few races. So we're seeing mid Torpedo. What else are we thinking? Spinella mid, pay driver. I don't know about pay driver. It was so very, very experienced, but driving a not very good car. It was Eddie Irvine. He was at, I think, either Spinella or pay driver. So Spinella, pay driver, 7th a few times. Yeah, of course, this is back in the day when you had to finish top 6 to score points, which is just ridiculous these days, I think. Pay driver mid. Spinella. I think either mid or Spinella. I think, to be honest, he probably should have been able to get a point here and there. Even with it only being the top 6 is the thing. So yeah, it's a lot of Spinella. I think it's gonna be Spinella. I'm seeing people saying mid or pay, and it's like, well, Spinella's in the middle, so we can kind of compromise. So yeah, I think we'll put Johnny Herbert in Spinella. Okay. Mika Häkkinen. So, again, my instinct... He didn't win a championship in the 2000s, but my instinct is GOAT. So we have two years to work off here. 2000, that was a... All things considered, even though he lost the championship, all things considered, that was a very good year for him. They just got a bit... Ferrari got themselves together, and he got very unlucky with a few breakdowns and stuff, but obviously he had that stunning double overtake in Spa. And yeah, 2001, again, he had so much bad luck. I mean, he retired on the last lap when he was about to win in Spain and stuff, and it just wasn't working anymore. But he's obviously he was obviously one of the stars of the 90s, and he went into the 2000s as the driver to beat. A couple of people are saying number 2. Yeah, number 2. I don't think it's so much of it was his driving. I remember him having most of the accidents he had were caused by mechanical failures, and just a lot of reliability things, and pushing very hard against a Ferrari at their full strength. It's mostly saying GOAT. I think it has to be GOAT, to be honest. So, yeah. It feels wrong putting him in the same alongside Coulthard in there, so I'll put... Yeah, Häkkinen can be GOAT. Right. So, from the sublime to the ridiculous, we go to Yuji Ide. So, with Ide, I feel bad for him because he's remembered for all the wrong reasons, but to be honest, I don't think he was a particularly bad driver. It's just that he had so little testing and so little preparation, because he'd already had quite a lot of time running in All Japan Formula 3 and like Super Formula Nippon, and was all right. He finished runner up in one of those one year, but he just wasn't ready for Formula 1. If he'd had maybe a year doing as a test driver, or he'd actually got to do some proper runs in pre-season testing, he might have got to grips with it better. But again, it was an absolutely awful car. And it's just, yeah, I mean, he wasn't flouting the rules, but he just kept spinning a lot in qualifying and blocking drivers. And then obviously he dive bombed out Christijan Albers and put him upside down in the gravel. And was just fairly old for a rookie. He was 31, I think, which is he's one of the oldest rookies in Formula 1, certainly in more recent decades. But I think on the basis of the fact that he drove badly enough to get his super license revoked, so I think we can put him in cucumber for that. But yeah, I feel kind of bad for the guy, because he just wasn't ready, is the thing. So next up is Eddie Irvine. So it's kind of jarring to think how close he came to becoming a champion, to be honest. And if you used the modern point system, he would have won the championship in 1999 by like 20 points or something. So quite a large margin, actually. And yeah, that was he did, I think, a very good job, taking the baton from Schumacher in 99. But then he spends a few years with Jaguar. Again, pretty awful team. They're the kind of the Aston Martin of the early 2000s. He had a habit of getting podiums, though, is the thing. I remember on the few times I watched races of that era, I supported him. It was because I loved the Jaguars and how good they looked with the British Racing Green, those gold rims. I was like, I'm going to support him. And he was always running in 9th whenever I was watching a race. I'm seeing a lot of torpedo for him. Irv the Swerve, yeah. And yeah, he got his podiums, and just had some he was pretty fractious relationships. I mean, Jaguar was a mess, as a team. Just the organisation, the cars and everything it's quite sad, really, because they looked so good. Yeah, so I think we'll put him. He can go. Yeah, he can go in torpedo. Without the podiums, he probably would have gone in in mid, I think. So yeah, we can put Eddie Irvine's gone in torpedo. Okay, Narain Karthikeyan. So this is Narain as a Jordan driver rather than an HRT driver. He had he had a reasonably good amount of reputation because he'd done fairly well in the judo formulas, considering that he'd come from outside of Europe as well in his early career, obviously being from India, and did a few tests. And then he got the seat with Jordan 2005. Couple of times, like the first few races, he had some good qualies, and was kind of approaching midfield. The second half of the season was when he started to tail off, though, and Montero got the point that actually counted because in Spa, a lot of people are saying Cucumber. I mean, the thing is, obviously, Cucumber is his namesake, but he wasn't that bad in 2005. He was worse than Montero, but not terrible, is the thing. I mean, again, as well as Cuba, he was a literal pay driver. I mean, he had very generous sponsorship from Tata Motors, both at Jordan and HRT. So yeah, mostly the same pay. So I think we'll put Narain Karthikeyan in pay driver. Okay, Nicolas Kiesa. So he did 3 races for Minardi in 2003, replacing Justin Wilson after he moved to Jaguar. Again, very unremarkable driver. Just didn't really do much, I don't think. Who's worse, Albers or Karthikeyan? Well, I'm going to say Karthikeyan. I mean, I put him below in pay driver as well. And Albers and Spinella. Yeah, Nicolas Kiesa. Yeah, just 3 races, not anywhere near Jos Verstappen's pace. Just a lack of data, really. If we compare him to Tomáš Enge, because Enge did 3 races again in a bad car, but crashed, whereas Kiesa didn't, is the thing. And it's again just a general lack of data. So I think what we got. So we got pay, Cucumber. Yeah, I think to be honest, I think pay driver is fair enough for Nicolas Kiesa. Right. Christian Klein. So this is the opposite, because in the 2010s video, he was the one that did only 3 races and there wasn't much to work off. So Christian Klein, we've got 2.5 years, or almost 3 years, racing with Jaguar and then Red Bull. So he was behind, he had Mark Webber and then David Coulthard as his teammates, obviously both more experienced than him. He was kind of behind them. Was it 5 races? Maybe it was 5. Yeah, but they weren't very good results anyway for Kiesa. Christian Klein, yeah, a few points here and there. No big crashes are pointing out to me. So we've got mid, Spinella. Yeah, he just wasn't. He was just kind of average, is the thing. Mid, and again, I'm seeing either mid or Spinella. Because I haven't really got teammates, because we haven't Coulthard, obviously that's mostly based off McLaren, and we haven't ranked Webber yet, so I can't really compare him to that. I think he could have scored more points than he did, to be honest, in that car. So maybe Spinella, I think, for Christian Klein. How many got left? 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9, 12, 13, 20. 26. 35 drivers. Okay, so I'm just not quite halfway there. Right. Okay. Kamui Kobayashi. So then, Kobayashi, only 2 races here, but 2 very memorable races. That was, yeah. I mean, that was a very entertaining performance. In Brazil, when he spent more than 10 laps or what it was, not letting Button through, who was trying to win the championship, and then he went and put Nakajima in the wall. And then 2000, and then Abu Dhabi, he again barged his way past Raikkonen at the start. So kind of reckless, but also you have to give him credit for having that much confidence as a rookie to do all of that. And so we're seeing, Torpedo. It got him a seat with Sauber, and we know it wasn't a fluke as well from his later performances as well. Yeah, so I think Torpedo is a fairly accurate one for Kobayashi, so he can go in Torpedo. Okay, Heikki. So he's another kind of literal number 2 driver. 2007, that was a fairly good debut. I mean, he except for Brazil, he finished every race. So he almost finished every race in his debut season. And got the drive with McLaren. Unfortunately, at McLaren, he just really wasn't there. He just didn't. There weren't that many podiums. Just wasn't really anywhere near Lewis's pace. I mean, he won in Hungary. He got pole in Silverstone, but unfortunately, he was racing against Lewis at his best, and so he held the lead for about 5 laps. 2009 was not. There's nothing to shout about. 2009. I mean, it was a crappy car, and he drove a lot worse than Lewis did. Got some points, no podiums, no wins. But then again, he showed when he did move to Lotus, he showed actually how good he is, even though he was driving some really, really bad cars. So what we're seeing, mid, Torpedo. Yeah, mid feels a little mean. I think Torpedo is because the Renault year was a very good year for him. It was just a bit disappointing because he wasn't even he wasn't even in a position to act as a proper wingman in 2008. Should have won Monza 08. Of course, he finished second in that race. That was there was a lot of weird stuff going on in that race. The rain obviously messed up everyone's setups and that. Mid Torpedo. I don't think there's anyone I can compare him to here. Like people like Fisichella is number 2. Davis. Considering we've got people like Buemi and Davidson in mid, I think he can go in Torpedo. So yeah, I think I'll put Heikki Kovalainen in Torpedo. Okay, Robert Kubica. So this is either going to be GOAT or number 2. So his main highlight is obviously 2008. And then one got their only win and was leading the championship. He said that they stopped development of the car after that, which is why he couldn't even really fight for the championship anymore. 2009 again, not a particularly good car. 2007 was still pretty solid, I think, to be honest. And 2006 he was still a rookie. He would have got second in Hungary, but then he got disqualified. A lot of people are saying GOAT, couple of number 2s. Yeah, I think GOAT, to be honest. 2008 was just so good for him in that. I mean, you could see he was clearly getting the maximum out of that car, but it just wasn't quite as good as the Ferrari and the McLaren. Brazil 2009, Australia, yeah. Oh yeah, the Australia had the crash, yeah, with the crash with Vettel. Yeah, a lot of people are saying GOAT, so let's put him in GOAT, I think. Right. Tonio Liuzzi. So he did he was Red Bull, then Toro Rosso, and then Force India. I think that's correct. I get mixed up. He filled in at Force India at the end of 2009 when Fisichella went to Ferrari. Mostly all right, to be honest. He was definitely, I think he had a fairly good 2006 in Toro Rosso's first season. He did get a point for them. In Indianapolis, he was far better than Scott Speed. 2007, he had a run of 11 non-finishes or something, which was mostly because the car kept breaking down. And then Vettel came along and was definitely a good match for him. So we've got Spinella, Torpedo mid. My instinct is going mid, I think, for Liuzzi. Because he did 2000. There were a couple of races in I think 2005. I think that was the year he was supposed to alternate with Clean all year, but he did like 2 races. To be honest, yeah, I think we can put. Let's put Liuzzi in mid. I think. Okay, Tarso Marques. So he was at Minardi in 2001 as a pay driver, but not really a pay driver because he had like he didn't really have much money behind him. But yeah, it was against rookie Alonso. Alonso was just much faster. He'd done a couple of years racing in the 90s, had Marquez. Peter, in your Midland review, you said Albers was faster than Montero, while you put Spinella and not mid. Well, I haven't ranked Montero yet. I suppose the Midland one, yeah. I mean, he had. I suppose he was. I'm trying to remember now exactly because I made that a long time ago. But yeah, I remember. I just remember him breaking down a lot and having a lot of bad luck. And I suppose, yeah, it's just not mid, I don't think, just thinking about Minardi as well. And he was the very first one we ranked on this tier list. So Marquez, we've got Cucumber, Spinella, Pay, Cucumber. Pay driver without the pay. Yeah. I think I said that in the ranking videos. Pay driver without the pay. Was it just 2001 or did he do I don't remember if he raced in 2000 as well. I think it was just 2001, and then the 90s there were a couple of years. But mostly just very slow and kind of, even though they didn't even, and he was kind of towing the line with the 107% rule as well. Pay, Cucumber. I'm going to put Marquez in Cucumber, I think. Right, Felipe Massa. So, again, the instinct is GOAT. This is pre-crash Massa, so it's him at his full strength. I mean, you can say what you want about whether he should or should not have been champion in 2008. I mean, you can do a deep dive. You could probably do a deep dive into that season and look at who lost and gained the most points through everything that happened. But yeah, 07 wasn't quite on the pace of Raikkonen, but still good. 06, first good year with Ferrari, I think, won a couple of races. His midfield years before that were mostly okay. He had a year out in the middle. But yeah, I'm mostly seeing GOAT, I think. Yeah, it's trying to think, because I just remember it's such a long time ago. You could see immediately when he came back to Ferrari in 2010, he just wasn't there anymore. And yeah, it obviously affected him, that crash. He also had, but he did make quite a few silly mistakes in 2008. I mean, he crashed in the first race. He spun off in Malaysia. He spun God knows how many times in Silverstone. And then he drove. I mean, the crash gate thing, obviously, that shouldn't have happened. But then he exited his pit box with the fuel hose attached. So those were some pretty big errors. I mean, the only compensation he had was that Lewis himself was making a lot of errors, which made it so close. But then there were obviously some dodgy penalties and breakdowns. It just didn't go his way. Goat still pissed about that last lap. Fuel rig, yeah. Goat. I think Goat. I mean, he was sort of a champion elect for about 35 seconds. Yeah, I think we can say I think Goat for Massa is fair, certainly. Okay, Gastón Mazzacane. So he was at Minardi in 2000. And then he did again, not particularly good car. Marc Gené was better, I think, of the two, certainly. And then he did 4 races at Prost and then got fired for just not being very good. So I'm thinking Cucumber. I mean, he got a lot of mileage in, to be honest. I mean, he was reasonably good at finishing races. So seeing Cucumber, pay driver, Cucumber, even though he wasn't accident prone. Yeah, that's the thing. He's just very slow. So yeah, I think Gastón Mazzacane, we can put him in Cucumber. Okay, Allan McNish. So he did 1 year in Toyota, in their debut year 2002. He probably could have driven in Formula 1 a bit before that, because he actually did some testing with MasterCard Lola in 1995 or 96, and there's pictures of him testing their car, but it doesn't have an engine cover, and they've got this really low, there's no air box behind the driver. But yeah, he scored no points in that car, had that nice big shunt at Suzuka. So we're seeing Spinella mid, might be the most mid guy of the whole 2000s. Didn't score points. Spinella. Yeah, I think maybe Spinella is fair enough, because it was Mika. It was either Mika Salo or Olivier Parnis. 2002 was the other one, and they did get some points. I think it was Mika Salo. Yeah, so he should have got points. So I think, yeah, Allan McNish can go in Spinella. Okay, Franck Montagny. So again, another pay driver. There's not a huge amount to say. He's mostly known for Le Mans and sports car racing, and he's now a pundit for the French coverage of Formula 1. He only did 6 or 7 races with Super Aguri in 2006. And yeah, just drove very averagely. He drove better than Ide and better than Yamamoto after him, but just didn't do much. I mean, he never finished any higher than 16th. Very unremarkable, really. He had, I think there was one, he got caught out in a crash at the start of Indianapolis. I think he was one of the ones involved in that pile up at the start. Yeah, and he's better pay driver. He was improvement compared to Yuji. He's caught for drugs. Maybe I didn't know anything about that. Possibly. Yeah, I think pay driver in that he was certainly better than Ide, and he should go above that. So yeah, we'll put Franck Montagny can go in pay driver. Right, Tiago Monteiro. So he had a very good year with Jordan 2005 because he either did finish every race or he came very close to finishing every race. There was one race near the end of the year that he didn't finish, I think. But otherwise, obviously, he got that famous podium that in normal circumstances would not have been anywhere near a podium. But he also scored a point in Spa. So even without Indianapolis, Jordan still would have beaten Minardi in their constructors' battle. 2006 Midland had, again, not the best car. Mid, I was saying Torpedo mid, top of pay driver. I mean, if we compare him to Albers, because they were teammates. I mean, he was obviously better than Karthikeyan, who's in pay driver. And then Albers is in Spinella. So either Spinella or mid. So what we got? Mid, Spinella. Another Spinella. Mid for Montero. Yeah, Spa was a good one. If you didn't know the circumstances behind the podium, you would easily say mid. It's very close between mid and Spinella. Spinella, I think we can be generous and put him in mid, to be honest. Just because he had his Jordan year was a very good one. So yeah, I think I'll put Tiago Monteiro in mid. Right. Juan Pablo Montoya. So this is a tricky one. My instinct again is going for GOAT for Montoya. I mean, he feels kind of like the Verstappen of his era in that he didn't care who you were. He was gonna just try and get past you, even as a rookie. I mean, there was Brazil 2002 was such a big race for him. Obviously on course to win, and then gets taken out by Jos when being lapped. And to be honest, most of the time he was burdened with the Williams breaking down so much because those cars were monsters, but they just couldn't finish races. And he's one of these ones who you wonder, could he have won a title if he'd been given? If he was in a Ferrari, he probably could have won a championship or two, I think. I mean, his career didn't really, it kind of faded out a bit. The McLaren years were not so good. I think he spent so long at Williams. He did struggle in 2005 with adjusting to the McLaren, and then he broke his shoulder, or damaged it and then had to miss a few races because of that. And yeah, I ranked him in the top 10 when I did the ranking video. Yeah, I've seen flawed GOAT. Yeah, that's a one. Probably GOAT. I feel like we should give him GOAT because even though he was reckless, he could back it up by being really fast, and because he had that fearlessness about him and that he didn't care who you were, he was going to try and pass you. I think Montoya can go in GOAT. Yeah. Right. Okay. Kazuki Nakajima. So he drove for Williams. The last race of 2007, for some reason Wirtz decided to retire one race early, and he ran over his mechanics. 2008, a couple of points finishes, but he mostly what I remember about him is just constantly breaking his front wing on like hitting other drivers and breaking his wing, and that and then 2009. I wanted so badly for him to score points, but he just never did. He finished ninth in Hungary. He qualified 5th in Silverstone. Like every so once in a while, he could have an all right qualifying, but he's one of these drivers that Formula One, like there seem to be a lot of Japanese drivers actually where Formula One just doesn't really work out, but then they end up doing really well in things like endurance racing or Super GT or something like that outside of it, and he's obviously one of those with his time racing doing Toyota in WEC. So we've got Mids, Pay, Spinalla. Yeah, my first thought is either Spinalla or Mid for him. Maybe Spinalla. Yeah. I think my instinct is going Spinalla. Could have been better, was accident prone, yeah. Yeah, I think a lot of people are saying Spinalla, so we can put Kazuki Nakajima in Spinalla. Okay, Olivier Panis. So this wasn't so much, the 2000s wasn't so much the tail end of his career as it was just the second half. So he did 2 years of Toyota, 2003, 2004. Before that, I think there was definitely some Prost in there, and maybe Sauber. I'm just picturing him in blue. Where's Jos Verstappen? He's he's alphabetically, so he's on the bottom row. He's currently bottom left at the moment. Mid. One in Monaco. Yep, that was in the 90s though, so that's not considered for this. I mean, that was obviously a crazy race. Monaco, only 3 people crossed the finish line. I'm just going blank. I feel like there's people in the chat, when it catches up, people will say like what it was, what the teams, because I know that there I remember 2 years at Toyota, and Prost, I feel like that was one of them as well, unless there was a break. Wait, BAR. Yes, thank you. That's what it was. BAR. No, yeah. Yeah, so people are mostly saying mid. McLaren Reserve in 2000. Right, yeah. Okay, yeah. So mid easily, mid. Yeah. I think mid. He doesn't have. I can't think of many standout performances at BAR or Toyota really that would have maybe bumped him up to Torpedo. Parnis was the Ocon of his generation. Yeah, I mean there does seem to be a habit recently of French drivers just winning one-off races kind of crazily, but otherwise being midfielders. So seeing mostly mid, a couple of torpedoes. If it was the 90s, I think you could justify Torpedo. Most people have said mid, so yeah, I think we can put Olivier Panis in mid. Right, Giorgio Pantano. So my first thought with him is, well, it's not going to be any higher than Pay Driver. So he did 2004 Jordan, and he was nothing more than a Pay Driver. He didn't do particularly well, and then he missed a couple of races because he was short of cash, and then Glock comes in and scores points. And that was it. And then 3 years later, he wins, or 4 years later, 2008, I think, was the year that he won GP2. And then he just never raced in Formula 1. He was one of the GP2 champions that never made it. Was it 2008? I think 2008, because 06 was Hamilton, 09 was Hulkenberg. Oh gosh, help me out, chat. What year was it? It was either 2008 and I think there was 2007. It was one of those 2 years that he won GP2. So we're seeing what we got: Panta Pay, yeah, pay driver, Cucumber pay driver. Yeah. Wasn't that GP2 championship after his whole F1 career? Yeah, it was quite late on, to be honest. I mean, Glock won it in 2007. Now, yeah, I remember now. Yeah, he won it in 2008. So what was it? Yeah, Paytano, boat. Yeah, pay driver. And then, Cucumber feels a tad mean because that's mostly for drivers that were slow and crashed, but I don't think was quite slow enough for that. He just got shown up quite badly by Glock and didn't last the year. I think we can do. Yeah, I think pay driver is fair enough for Giorgio Pantano. Right then, Nelson Piquet Jr. So, his legacy is a bit complicated because he was obviously complicit in Crashgate because he went along with it. Although I believe that they had basically they said, "Oh, if you do this for us, then you get to race with us next year." I feel like that there was some kind of that was his incentive for wanting to go along with it. If we ignore Crashgate for a minute, he had that podium in Germany. I mean, very clever with strategy, but still, like, second place. I mean, hello. Otherwise, slow, crashed. 2009, got fired for being slow and crashing. And that. Spinella pay, Spinella. Had he not got that podium, you could easily just say pay driver. But yeah, I think most people are saying Spinella. I think we can put. Yeah, I think we can put Spinella. Just another son of a former driver that was never really able to match their expectations, I suppose. Let's put Nelson Piquet in Spinella. Fourth in Fuji, yeah, that was the other good race. That was the one that Alonso won fair and square. And yeah, he finished fourth, didn't he? Okay. So next is Antonio Pizzonia. So he did Jaguar in 2003 and then got dropped towards the end and was replaced with Justin Wilson. And was there... He was another one who did a couple of races with Williams as well, Pizzonia. This is where I get him mixed up with Cristiano da Matta, even though they never drove for the same teams. Was it 2005 where he did a few races for Williams? Towards the end, I'm getting him mixed up with Marc Gené again. So what we got? Pay or spin? High pay driver. He wasn't particularly remarkable. Pay, he wasn't that bad. Pay driver. Yeah, I mean, most people are saying it's almost entirely pay driver actually. So yeah, we'll put Antonio Pizzonia in pay driver. He did lead a lap in Spa 2004. Maybe that was the race he was covering for Williams. Yes, Williams 2005 at the end. Who would he have been covering? It was Heidfeld. Yes, Heidfeld was injured, wasn't he, and missed a few races, and then he came in. And Ralph and 2004 and Heidfeld. Yeah, okay, yeah, he did both. Yeah, Okay, Kimi. So yeah, Kimi is obvious GOAT. I mean, this is peak Kimi. Like when he drove the socks off the cars and when he actually gave a fuck about anything, which he stopped doing, I think, when he came back. Yeah, so Kimi, yeah, I'll put Kimi GOAT, but I mean, it's just he could have been a 3-time champion and he got one. I mean, he should have been the champion in 2005. I mean, 3 times the car broke down while he was leading, and then Alonso won, and so that's a points turnover of what, 36 points or something. And 2003, without those dodgy tire changes at the end, he was on course. He could have. I mean, he was so consistent, but he won one race, but then he finished second like 7 times or something. An absolute monster in qualifying, and had incredible races like Suzuka 2005. Yeah, and obviously 2008 it fell apart at the end. And 2009 again, he won a race or two, but it's a pretty half-assed Ferrari. Yeah, Kimi again is the default is GOAT because he won a championship. Okay, next up is Barbie. So very good debut race, as I talked about in one of my more recent videos. But rest of 2006 was pretty rotten because it was a car that broke down endlessly, and he also enjoyed a nice first lap crash when he could get them in. 2007 midfield, much better car, and he drove a lot better. He didn't. Wirtz got a podium in Canada. I don't think Rosberg got any podiums in 2007. He certainly did 2008. Finished, got third in Australia and then second, in Singapore. Barbie. Oh god, yeah. No, it's Brittany, not Barbie. Yeah, this is what's annoying with the chat being so far behind. Yeah, no, it is. It's Brittany, not Barbie. Yeah. So, in 2009, it was a lot. That was a good year. He got 35 points roughly to Nakajima's 0. So he basically was carrying the whole team. A solid number 2 without being number 2. Yeah. Strong torpedo, number 2. This is the thing. I want to be number 2. It's interesting because at the time, you never would have suspected that he would have been champion one day, even though he was obviously pretty good. So solid torpedo, couple of number 2s. If we look at who else is in 2, I mean, if he was in 2, he's alongside people like Heidfeld and Coulthard, Fisichella. I think 2 is a little generous. Torpedo, yeah, Glock, Kobayashi, Kovalainen as well. That's something you can compare him with more directly. Could he have won Malaysia 2009? Maybe. Button won. Did he finish second? Heidfeld wasn't. I can't. He finished a bit further down, but I can't remember exactly if he was leading at one point. I mean, he complains that he could have won Singapore, 08, and kind of Alonso, but without the Crashgate stuff, he wouldn't have been a contender. But yeah. I think torpedo for Rosberg, because like 06 he just made quite a few crashes and that. So yeah, we'll put Nico Rosberg in torpedo. Right, Mika Salo. So again, broadly similar to people like Parnis and that, in the tail end of his career. Toyota did he was with them in 2002, quite possibly 2003. He'd gone into it having subbed for Schumacher at Ferrari in 99. Mid 2000, yeah, mid. He'd done mid for outperformed his I'm guessing because I can't remember, I'm guessing he spent 2001 the year off because that was the year that Toyota built a car just for testing and spent the whole year testing it. Both teammates in 2000 and 2002. It was Sauber in 2000, wasn't it? Because that was Pedro Diniz. Yeah. So Sauber and then Toyota. 2000. Yeah, I think he got. There's a few points at Sauber, 1 or 2 Toyota, but I think mostly mid. You could compare him to people like Frentzen and Parnis in that respect. So yeah, I think mid. In the 90s, he'd be Torpedo. Yeah, I think he would be for that. So yeah, we'll put Mika Salo in mid. How many drivers have we got left? 4, 13, 16 drivers remaining. So we've done 55. Wow. Okay, Takuma Sato. So he had his debut year was kind of like Tsunoda's in that maybe he was called up a bit early and was just making he obviously still had things to learn and just made quite a few mistakes. Brought in right at the end of 2003 for BAR. 2004, that was BAR's best year. He gets his podium at Indianapolis, but doesn't get any others, whereas Button got like 10 or 11 podiums. 2005 was pretty wretched for him. He got 1 point in the end. So we're seeing already pay driver, torpedo mid. And then we get to... But then we have Super Aguri, and even though the car was awful, he drove very well in it. I mean, the team was built around him. It was essentially just built to try and keep him in the sport because he was so popular. I mean, yeah, obviously the scoring points in that car that was very good for him. Mid or torpedo? Most people are saying torpedo mid. Yeah. 2005 was bad while Button was fantastic. Yeah. I mean, only a single point. You can see why they didn't want to keep him on, really. But he could be so fast. He was starting on the front row in Germany, Nürburgring in I think more than likely 04 because that was when they had the car for it, or maybe 05. Yeah, either torpedo or mid for Sato. Again, a few crashes here, so that's leaning more towards torpedo. If think about who else, I mean, Kobayashi's there, but he's got 2 races. Glock, De La Rosa. He was certainly better than Anthony Davidson. On that basis, I think torpedo is a good shout for Sato. Like on a good day, really fast, but just crashed too often, really. So kind of similar in that sense to Kobayashi. Okay. Some guy called Michael Schumacher's next. I'm just gonna put him in GOAT because that's a pretty obvious one. I don't think. I mean, the chat's a bit behind, but I don't think you can dispute it. To be honest, yeah. Yeah, I mean, I've already seen goats coming in a couple of times on it. The first like all-conquering like sustained dominance probably since like people like Fangio and Clark, like to see everyone else in that preceding 40 years, there were mixtures of people winning championships in between. Yeah. So yeah, he's a GOAT. After Michael comes Ralph. So Ralph wasn't anywhere near Michael's level. Not bad for a number 2 Schumacher. Yeah. So his type, Williams, again similar to Montoya, like amazing car that broke down too much, but just it didn't. He didn't have the same. I mean, people were saying earlier as well that Montoya got in his head. He just didn't have quite that same gutsiness to him. and he had an obsession with crashing and injuring himself as well. Toyota, Trulli was broadly better. Like 06 didn't go so well. 05 was a good car. That was a good one. So seeing Torpedo number 2, mid number 2, number 2 or Torpedo. He's a complex one because he won a few. He won 6 or 7 races as well. If we look at who else is in there, I mean, okay, like people like Coulthard and Fisichella and Barrichello, they're all broadly analogous to him in terms of their position and performance. Congrats to the 10,000. Thank you very much. But then Torpedo, that would put him in line with like Della Rosa and Kovalainen and Rosberg. I think it's number 2. Most people are saying number 2. So yeah, we'll put Ralph. Ralph can go in number 2. Oh, we're down to the final row at the bottom. So the not so aptly named Scott Speed. He was the first American driver since Michael Andretti, and since him we've only had Alexander Rossi. But like, yeah, the 1 point he would have scored in 2006 got taken away from him because of a time penalty. And then 2007, as well as the car breaking down, he just wasn't very good, and then he bins it in the gravel in Nürburgring, and then gets punched in the face by Franz Tost and fired. Yeah. Either for Speed, mid, Spinella, pay driver, Spinella. He's not cucumber level, certainly. Scott Slow, pay driver, way too arrogant. Yeah, he was quite brash, I think, sometimes. Not quite as media trained maybe as some of the other ones. Speed, Spinella. I'm trying to think myself. I mean, I'm almost leaning towards pay driver, but Spinella. I mean, to be honest, most of the misfortunes that they had in terms of poor results was because the car was breaking down so often. Where did I put Liuzzi actually? Because that's the benchmark is Liuzzi, who's in mid. Almost everybody is saying Spinella, so yeah, well, let's put Scott Speed in Spinella. Okay, Adrian Sutil. So this is his career splits almost perfectly down the middle between the 2000s and the 2010s in terms of racing. So Spiker 2007, uncompetitive car, but he walked all over Albers, Winkelhock and Yamamoto. Got a point, even though the car wasn't fast enough ever to really justify getting points. It was just so they hadn't progressed since last year, and it was the same. No, it was a new car. They used it again in 2008. But yeah, got a point. 2008. It's so painful still, just remembering Monaco, like how close he was to getting that 4th place, because that would have put them above. At the time, it would have put them above Honda and probably Toro Rosso as well. And then 2009, again, he crashed in China right at the end when he was in the points, and then he crashed again in the Nürburgring, and then he got 4th with fastest lap in Monza. So we're seeing mid, Torpedo mid, Spinella, temperamental mid, Sutil the middest mid there is, the middest of the mid. Yeah, I think so, because there was a mix. He did almost everything, because he could be fast, but then he had lots of bad luck and lots of crashes. So yeah, I think we'll put Adrian Sutil in mid. Right, Jarno Trulli. My instinct again is comparing him to other drivers is number 2 driver. Obviously, the pioneer of the Trulli train. with his very good qualifying but not so good race pace. So he did a couple of years with Jordan, and again, good car that broke down so much was the problem, mostly. But he had, again, good quality performances. 2000 then he went to 2002 was Renault in their first year back. Better than Button, but Button was not very experienced. I was saying strong torpedo, train driver, number 2 driver. 2002. And then 2003 he was there, but then Alonso shat all over him basically. 2004, again, some amazing qualifying performances and some really he got his only win, didn't he, in Monaco? So that's obviously a good thing. But then got fired at the end, and then 3 reasonably good years, 4 fairly good years with Toyota, or 5 rather, 05 to 09. 5 seasons with Toyota, and a couple of pole positions, and I'm gonna say a couple of podiums, but I don't remember specifically where. But yeah, I mean, again, his career is broadly analogous to Fisichella's. They raced at more or less the same time. They were never teammates, but they drove a lot of the same teams and that. 04 didn't end so well. I mean, because he cost them a lot of points in the constructors' battle with BAR. But otherwise, I think either number 2 or torpedo. So I was seeing classic torpedo, same row as Fisichella. The OG Mr. Saturday. Trulli Train puts him in mid. Mid is a bit low. It's either going to be number 2 or torpedo. I want to say number 2, but nobody's saying number 2. Everyone is saying torpedo. So I think, I think torpedo. Like a high torpedo, almost in just scratching the surface of number 2, I think. So next up we have Max's dad. So he did Arrows and Minardi. So 2003 he was at Minardi, and then he was at Arrows in 2001, and maybe 2000. He's one of these drivers who basically was a bit of a village bicycle and just kind of drove for like every team across his career at some point. Just couldn't. It's like Andre de Cesaris in that way. But yeah, I mean, what he took out Montoya when he was leading in Brazil in 2002. Was he at Minardi in 2002? Maybe that was 2003. So we got pay driver, Spinella, strong torpedo, Spinella. Yeah, I mean, he could, like, him and De La Rosa got on really well at Arrows. Cucumber, Spinella at the most. Mid, high mid. Hockenheim 2000. That would have been... He finished 4th, I think, because that was... I mean, Arrows, because they had a very good engine and they were really good in long straights. So they always did well at Hockenheim, I remember. But they also had to... Because they had a very small fuel tank, they were forced to do, like, aggressive low fuel strategies and stuff. De La Rosa in 2000, yep, that's it. I know that there was a gap somewhere because it was definitely Minardi 2003. I don't want to cheat and look it up. But yeah, a lot of people are saying Spinella, mid to Spinella. So his teammates in 2003 at Minardi, Justin Wilson and Anthony Davidson. Yeah. Most people are saying Spinella is the thing, but it's either mid or Spinella for Jos. Mid. It's getting difficult because as it gets filled up, you get more and more to compare them to. Mid, Spinella on bad days. Spinella. I mean, yeah, he was driving some pretty rotten cars. Is the thing. So Spinella's very harsh, to be honest. Yeah, let's go mid. Yeah. So Jos Verstappen can go mid. Okay. The finger boy is next. With Vettel, like 2008 was so good. Like one of the best non-championship campaigns in the whole of Formula One history, I think. 2009, it wasn't his time, but he did not help himself because he made a few very, very costly errors. I mean, he came out of the first two races with no points, and Button won two of them, and he was just on the back foot from there on, even though in the second half of 2009, Red Bull had the best car. And then 2007, like mostly just average, and then almost gets the podium in Fuji, and then crashes into Webber, and then he does get fourth from 17th in China. Number two. Yeah, I'm thinking number two. It's not quite. If he hadn't made those errors in 2009, he'd be GOAT. So I think we'll put Vettel in GOAT. He just doesn't quite make the cut sorry, put him in number two. He doesn't quite make the cut for GOAT, is what I meant to say. So wonders if now that he's retiring, his cars will be naming him instead of other way around. Right. Okay. So Jacques Villeneuve. So he had quite a fall from grace, to be honest, to win a champ. I mean, in the first couple of years, like I was thinking, like there was such obvious analogies between his career and Lewis Hamilton's, though. To debut with a top tier team, finish runner-up in your first year, and then win in your second. And then because 2009 was going so badly for Lewis, I was like, well, actually, this is kind of like when it went downhill at Williams. But yeah, okay, so going to the 2000s, so he joined BAR in 99. He was then for a few years, and he tried and failed to basically build the team around him like Schumacher had with Ferrari. And then he got fired by them at the end of 2003. 2004, he got brought back for the last 2 or 3 races of 2004, in the hope was that he would score points for the constructors, but then he just got lapped in every race. Sauber 2005, he didn't really get on with them because he had really weird setup demands. And then 2006 was just, again, he just did not get on with the team and then just gave up after he crashed in Germany. So we got mid, Torpedo mid, Spinella, 90s GOAT, 2000 Clown. Yeah, there was because I think it started strong and then plummeted. Yeah, that's the thing. He got a few podiums and it just kept getting worse and worse. Mid, Torpedo mid, supremely unremarkable mid, rubbish at Renault. Yeah. He just had his set. I mean, he had he went for this incredibly short throttle, was one of his weird setup demands and stuff like that people just didn't really understand. It meant that basically nobody else could have driven his cars in the way he set them up. So he got mid, rubbish at Renault. Yeah, most people are saying mid. So we'll go, I'll put rating his singing career. Very poor at Sauber, never near what he wanted. Torpedo, mid. Yeah, I think, Villeneuve, he can go in mid. Yeah. Okay, next up, we've got a very tasteful photo of Mark Webber. So, amazing debut. 5th place in a Minardi. In a race that only had, 7 or 8 finishers, but still. In Australia. Otherwise, just, did Minardi things. 2 years of Jaguar. Again, quite crappy cars, but he got what he could out of it. Williams 2005. Again, he got that podium in Monaco. Fairly good. 2006 Williams. Absolutely awful car. And again, I think 3 times he was running in the podium positions, and then the car broke down. 2 or 3 times, something like that. Kubica's what category? Kubica is in GOAT. Weber. So we're seeing a lot of torpedo. Yeah, 08. I'm trying to think. Yeah, 07 and 08, he was better than Coulthard, standard midfield stuff. And then 2009, he won a couple, 1 or 2 races, but he set the tone for the rest of Red Bull's time of just being so much slower than Vettel. So Mes is saying torpedo, strong torpedo, mega qualities at Jaguar. Number 2. Sorry, what does torpedo mean? It's a nickname that was given by Vettel to Daniel Kvyat, China 2016, when he dive bombed him at the start, and so he said you came in like a torpedo. So that's what that's referring to. Great in quality and rubbish cars at Jag. Williams the same, and then decent at Red Bull. Torpedo. Yeah, number 2 is a bit high. I think, to be honest, because he was predominantly a midfield guy. And most people are saying torpedo. So yeah, we'll put Mark Webber in torpedo. Right. Next up, we have the late Justin Wilson. So he really struggled to get himself into F1. Where's Kimi Räikkönen? Kimi's in GOAT. Yeah, it's at the top. So Justin Wilson, yeah, he had to do. I think he put himself on the stock market, also that people could buy shares in him, and helped out fund his career, something like that, for Justin. And he was at Minardi alongside Verstappen, and then he did a few races at Jaguar alongside Webber. And yeah, it was a fairly quiet time, to be honest, for him before he went on to move to America. The chat should say what he's gonna wait for the chat to update itself. It seems to have paused. See what people are thinking. My first I'm thinking towards mid or Spinella. Not the best machinery, so let's say Spinella. Mid. Yeah. It's a tricky one. It'll be the mid or Spinella. But if we look at who else is there, Da Matta, Davison Villeneuve, and then we've got Albers, Dornbos. We go with Spinella. Mid Spinella, yeah. Did he score? I think he did score a point or 2 with Jaguar in the few races. I think it was Indianapolis. He got a couple. Most people are saying Spinella. Yeah. I think he was just he just wasn't particularly memorable. Yeah, most people are saying, I think, yeah, we'll put Justin Wilson in Spinella. Okay. Marcus Winkelhock. This is another difficult one because of the lack of data. So he did one race. For those that don't know, he did one race for Sauber at the European Grand Prix in 2007. And because he made the decision to put wet tyres on before the race started, he ended up leading it when the rain started coming down for like the first 3 or 4 laps by something like 40 seconds or whatever in like his very first race as well. It was ridiculous. And then obviously when they red flagged it and restarted, it dried out and then he dropped like a stone and then the hydraulics gave up. Goat mid... Yeah... Goat for a single day. I mean, it was a very heroic performance. If you look at it pragmatically, okay, it was his first race. He was about a second behind Sutil in qualifying. It was a bloody awful car. But those 3 laps at the start are some of the best laps of any rookie ever, is the thing, because it was his first race. He hadn't driven a Formula 1 car before, like until like 2 days before, and it was pouring down. He'd never driven the car in the wet as well. And he gets this gigantic lead. But it's like with the last video with Andre Lotterer, there's just so little data to give for him. And just unfortunately, they never got him back, and they replaced him with Sakon Yamamoto. Some people are saying go. I can't put him in go. Mid torpedo. So I think if it had just been a normal race and he'd finished last, he'd probably end up in either pay driver or cucumber. For real, he's probably mid. Torpedo number 2. He's the anti-Andre Lotterer mid. Check your comments on your screen. Somebody just used the end. Okay, I didn't see that. I'll look into that. If in doubt, mid. He was the team Spike R. If in doubt, mid. I think on the general basis of lack of data and that you could go either way, I think we'll just put Winkelhock in mid. Yeah, I think so. Okay, so we should go down to the final 4. So we have Alexander Wirtz next. He is a similar one in that to De La Rosa, and that he spent more time testing than driving, really, or racing. Before Williams in 2007, he was mostly testing with McLaren. He did one race for them in 2005, where he finished 3rd at San Imola. He did, in the 90s, he was driving for Benetton, but I don't think that extended into the 2000s. Benetton in 2000. That was Fisichella and I don't think it was him. I think it was just B. Anyway, people are mostly saying mid. Benetton at Benetton and Williams mid. When was he at Benetton? Was that 2000? Because 2000 was Ralph. Oh no, he was in 98 or 99. He was at Williams, wasn't he? Yeah, most people are saying mid. I mean, yeah, he got a podium in Canada, but otherwise he didn't really. It was just all right. I don't think he was. You can compare it to De La Rosa. I don't think he was as good as De La Rosa, to be honest. Yeah, but he just spent more time testing than racing. So I think we'll put Alex Wirtz can go in mid. Benetton 98. Yeah, that sounds. What's the criteria for Rosberg to be in Torpedo? Well, he was a fairly solid midfielder, but it's mostly on the basis of having quite a few errors in 2006. I think for Rosberg is the main thing. And again, this is pre-2010s Rosberg. So, Sakon Yamamoto. Again, like with the last video, it's more than likely going to be Cucumber, because I can talk about this because I've covered it in great detail with him. So his Grand Prix debut came 2005 Japan. He ran as Friday driver for Jordan because he knew Colin Collars. 2006 he replaces Franck Montagny at Super Aguri, and he had a couple of dodgy. I mean, it was a bit of a difficult start, but he had things like the car broke down just at turn 1 in Hungary. Otherwise, when he did finish, he was just so slow. He had a good race. Like, Minardi worked really well in Brazil, but like the tyres worked. Like, Sato finished 10th, and he still finished last, but he was right on the tail of the Midlands, and he got the second fastest middle sector or something as well. So that was good. 2007, however, second half with Spiker, he crashes out on his own in the first race back in Hungary. He spun a bit. He spun a couple of times in Japan, but did not finish last. That's the only time he didn't. He's in politics now. Yeah, he is. It's the Japanese House of Representatives. I think he's their equivalent of like an MP or a congressman. I'm not really sure. Something like that. Yeah, everyone's saying Cucumber, and to be honest, yeah. I mean, the Fisichella crash, that was the end of his time at Spiker. That wasn't his fault. To to be honest, because Fisichella just cut across the grass at the first corner and came onto the track right in front of him. But yeah, very, very slow. Basically always either qualified and finished last. So yeah, Sakon Yamamoto is a cucumber. Final two. So next is Alex Young. So he is the last driver before HRT to fail to qualify for a race, which he did a couple of times in 2002. So pay driver at Minardi, and just very slow. They made him sit out a few races so that he could get better, and he basically didn't. Alex Young was a Malaysian hope, but he's cucumber. I mean, yeah, obviously he was. I was a pioneer, obviously first Malaysian Formula One driver and that, but just slow enough to not even qualify. So it's this is an easy cucumber, I think, for Alex Young. Paycumber, yeah, something like that. Yeah, pay driver is too generous. So yeah, cucumberist cucumber in the field of cucumbers. Yeah. So yeah, Alex Young, he's going in cucumber. Right, so we got just over 2 hours it went for, so similar to the last one. So the last driver is Ricardo Zonta. He is another one like De La Rosa and Alex Wurz that spent more time testing than racing. So he did a year with BAR in 1999. Before that, he'd won the FIA GT Championship, and I think he won Euro Formula Open by Nissan. So he had a very good junior career, and he was held in quite high regard. So he did a year with BAR. I'm pretty certain he was still there in 2000. He eventually went on, and then kicked for Germany 2000, because he eventually became Toyota's test driver, and that was when he got called in 2005 Indianapolis, and then they ended up pulling out, and then he was test driver for Renault for a few years. Did he do any other race? He must have done a season with Minardi post 99. He was just a bit disappointing. He's one of these ones, I suppose, similar to Stoffel Van Dorn, in that he had a stellar junior career, but then it just didn't. Formula One just didn't really work. So people are saying mid, Spinella, mid, Spinella. I'm just going black. He must have had he would have had a couple of years at BAR, but just yeah. Jordan, yes, that was it. He did a few races for Jordan in 2001. Yes, that was when Frentzen got fired, and so they had a couple of races with Villesi, and then they had a couple of races with Zonta. Yeah, I remember that now. Yeah, very, very stop-start career for Ricardo Zonta. And yeah, he was at BAR in 2000. So anyway, so mid, Spinella, mid. If we compare it to people like, he's not Torpedo. Wurz is in mid. Villeneuve, who he was racing against, is in mid. So, mid or spin? Spinella, yeah. Most people are saying Spinella. So yeah, I think we'll finish this up with Zonta in Spinella. So yeah, I am more than certain this is every driver, because when I was doing the ranking video, halfway through recording, I realised that I'd forgotten to put Glock in, so I had to throw him in quickly and record that. But anyway, here we have a tier list for all 71 Formula 1 drivers in the 2000s. So like last time, I'll just summarise. So in Cucumber, we've got Luca Badoer, Tomáš Enge, Patrick Friesacker, Romain Grosjean, Yuji Ide, Tarso Marques, Gastón Mazzacane, Sakon Yamamoto, and Alex Young. In Pay Driver, we have Zsolt Baumgartner, Enrique Bernoldi, Gianmaria Bruni, Luciano Burti, Pedro Diniz, Narain Karthikeyan, Nicolas Kiesa, Franck Montagny, Giorgio Pantano, and Antonio Pizzonia. In Spinella, Christijan Albers, Jaime Alguersuari, Sébastien Bourdais, Robert Dornbos, Ralph Furman, Marc Gené, Johnny Herbert, Christian Klein, Allan McNish, Kazuki Nakajima, Nelson Piquet Jr., Scott Speed, Justin Wilson, and Ricardo Zonta. In mid, we have Jean Alesi, Sébastien Buemi, Cristiano da Matta, Anthony Davidson, Heinz-Harald Frentzen, Antonio Liuzzi, Thiago Montero, Olivier Panis, Mika Salo, Adrian Sutil, Jos Verstappen, Jacques Villeneuve, Marcus Winkelhock, and Alexander Wirtz. In Torpedo, Pedro de la Rosa, Timo Glock, Eddie Irvine, Kamui Kobayashi, Heikki Kovalainen, Nico Rosberg, Takuma Sato, Jarno Trulli, and Mark Webber. In not bad for a number 2 driver, Rubens Barrichello, David Coulthard, Giancarlo Fisichella, Nick Heidfeld, Ralf Schumacher, Sebastian Vettel. And in GOAT, Fernando Alonso, Jenson Button, Lewis Hamilton, Mika Häkkinen, Robert Kubica, Felipe Massa, Juan Pablo Montoya, Kimi Räikkönen, and Michael Schumacher. Right, let's have a look at the chat. Is there anything? Will you do a tier list of the 90s? I will eventually, not anytime soon, because first of all, I need to do the official ranking video, which I'm going to be starting work on properly soon. Once I finish the video I'm currently working on, I'm then going to, because I've done preliminary rankings for that one, but I haven't done any script writing or hardcore research. So that will come out, the 90s one. And then I eventually, yes, I'll do a tier list as well. I'll do the same with the cars too. Just want to take the opportunity to say, really enjoy your content and the level of detail is mind-boggling. Thank you very much. Yes, yeah, I like to pride myself on the amount of detail that I put in. If you do an impression of an F1 car, I will subscribe. No, I can't do that. Right. Let's see. Yeah. Not much else to say. Obviously, I'll save and post this on Twitter and see what people make of it. And I'll try and do. I'll do more live streams just as filler in weeks when I'm not going to be getting videos out, and I can do tier lists for cars. I want to try doing them for the cars as well. That would be fun. Maybe even team principals, because I haven't done ranking videos, but I could do a tier list for team principals. I think that would be quite fun. Who is the GOATs of all the 2000s GOATs? Well, the GOAT is Schumacher, but yeah. Yeah, I'm starting to ramble, so yeah, I'll call it a day there. So yeah, thank you all very much for. I keep looking at my phone and realize the camera's here. Yeah, so thank you all very much for tuning in. The next video should hopefully be out next week, and yeah, I'll try and do more of these in the future. But yeah, I'll call it a day there and see you around. So yeah, bye guys.